So just minutes ago, I watched YC Image's video where he talked about 5 pieces of gear that he really regrets buying as a filmmaker, which really made me think to myself, there's a lot of gear that I personally have regretted buying over the past couple years doing this thing, whether that's doing my production business or doing this YouTube thing. But I definitely wanted to share with you guys 5 pieces of gear that I've even recommended on this channel that personally I regret buying. What's good, creative fan? Brandon Washington here. First of all, if you're brand new to the channel, definitely consider hitting that subscribe button because this channel is all about filmmaking gear, tips, and tutorials. But in today's video, like I mentioned, I'm gonna be walking you guys through 5 pieces of gear that I personally regret purchasing. The first being basically any smartphone filmmaking or photography accessory. Right now, I'm personally rocking the iPhone 11 Pro, and taking photos and videos on my phone is pretty much something I do on the regular, but as someone who has, gear acquisition syndrome, I am always trying to buy new crap that I probably really don't need, which means I bought basically every accessory you could possibly get for a smartphone. That includes lenses, tripods, and of course, cell phone gimbals. And I can tell you right now that none of that stuff has ever really been used in a practical sense. I've never been on a vacation or gone out with the family and was like, you know what I really need to take right now? My Movi. It just never breaks out. I mean, I guess because whenever I'm actually out filming, I'm using my real gear. And then when I go out with my family, I just want it to be simple. So I end up just taking my phone, obviously. But yeah, iPhone and cell phone accessories are pretty much probably the first thing that I've never brought out with me to practically use. All right, the second thing that I really regret purchasing is cheap accessories in general. Now this is kind of broad, but you'll probably understand what I say. Like when I first got into this whole filmmaking thing, I tried to get lights, and of course lighting is super expensive. So I went to Amazon and I bought the cheap light stands and I bought the cheap soft boxes, the ones that are like $100 plus, maybe $100 to $150 for like a whole 3 lighting set. And pretty much that stuff broke immediately and it was complete and total garbage. And back in the day, it wasn't nearly as good as what you can get now. So I can tell you most of those accessories are sitting in my garage because the other problem with buying really cheap accessories is you can't even sell them when you don't want them anymore. And 9 times out of 10, you can't even give them away. It's because they're trash. Nobody really wants them and you really only use them for a small period of your actual career. So I'll tell you right now, if you only have $100 or $200 to spend on lighting and you're like, man, I really need some lights, just save your money. I would honestly say there's maybe a few little pieces of accessories that I'd actually pick up that are pretty inexpensive, but for the most part, just save that money and rent good stuff that you can use on your next project. That way your projects will be better, you'll get paid more for the next project, and eventually you'll be able to actually afford some really good gear. So don't waste your money on cheap accessories. It's especially lighting accessories. It ain't worth it. All right, now the third accessory that I really, really regret buying, and YC actually mentioned it too, and it's the truth, is all my GoPro stuff. I have so much GoPro crap. I have a whole bin, wait, hold on one second. Let me grab it real quick. All right, this thing here is an entire bin of just GoPro crap. I mean, I've got everything in here. I've got the Polar Pro dome thing. I've got this vlogging cage thing, chest mount thing. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. I got lenses, grips. I mean, I could do this all day. This whole bin is just. That whole bin is just full of GoPro crap. And then, not to mention, I currently own 2 GoPros. I have the GoPro Hero 7, which is the newest one, I believe, and the GoPro Hero 6. And literally, I never use them. I hardly ever actually take them out and use them in any situation. I don't vlog with them. I don't do that much underwater stuff. I'm not an action sports star. So realistically, there's no reason for me to have it, and I can honestly say, as messed up as it is that I have all this stuff and I regret buying most of it. Oh, did I mention I own the GoPro Hero Fusion? Why? As messed up as it is to have all this stuff, I'm actually considering the new GoPro that's gonna be announced, I think it's on October 1st. And why am I even considering that? Because I get the ads for it. I'm oh, that'd be cool. I'm a sucker for GoPro stuff, but I definitely regret buying any of the GoPro stuff, accessories that I have, because truth is I never use it. All right, the fourth thing that I regret purchasing, and this one's kind of a catch-22. So I regret buying it, but only because I don't use it anymore. And that is most of my cage stuff. So every camera that I've ever bought, whether that was the 1DX Mark II, the Sony a7S, or no, the Sony a7 III, the M50, you know, when I use the EOS R, every camera that I've ever purchased, I've got a cage for it and rigged it out to basically be a cinema camera. And the problem with that is I'm trying to take mirrorless cameras and turn them into cinema cameras. And realistically, if I do the math and I look at how much money I spent on cages and then lost on cages and accessories and all this other stuff, I probably should have just bought a cinema camera a long time ago, which is why now I shoot with the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, and I have that camera rigged out, and I love that that camera is rigged out. But even with that camera, sometimes I just wonder if I shouldn't just go ahead and buy, like, you know, a C200 or something like that. And the problem for me is just the price difference. So what ends up happening is if I have all these cameras, I have all these cages, and then when I go to sell the camera, I basically just have to give the cage away with the camera, because not everyone's looking for those cages and they're super hard to sell. So when it comes to a regret, buying everything to rig out a mirrorless camera, unless you're for sure you're going to be using that camera for like the next year, which with my track record, I never use a camera for over a year. You know, it just really isn't that great of an investment. And the last and final thing that I regret is every camera I've ever purchased since the 1DX Mark II. Now, I know a lot of you guys are like, why do you regret buying cameras? And that's because I buy so many freaking cameras. It's kind of ridiculous. So right now, I run my own production company, and so that means I have to keep all my books, and I have to keep, you know, all of my taxes and all my information. And so I see at the end of the year how many cameras I bought, how many cameras I sold, how much money I made off these cameras, and realistically, it never adds up in the positive. You know, for me, I love cameras. I love shooting with different cameras. But the problem is I end up buying a lot of cameras, shooting with them for a couple months, and then seeing something that I like in another camera. And then so I sell that camera and I swap over to a new system. And that's really not like a good business decision. So I'm gonna give you guys some advice right now that I personally need to take. So I'm probably gonna watch this video back to try to listen to myself and take the advice. Probably won't do it, but I'm gonna give the advice anyway. Buy a camera that can do 80% of your jobs. And so what I mean by that is, think about your past clients, think about what you want for your future clients, and then think about what it's gonna take to do that job. Buy a camera that's going to be able to handle 80% of that. Because the problem that I've currently found is that there's no one camera that can handle everything. So find out what all those jobs have in common. What's 80% of what they have in common? Find a camera that can handle that. Buy that camera, don't look back, and then when those 20% of camera jobs come up that your camera can't handle, rent. That's something I'm trying to do right now. I've been trying to rent cameras instead of buying as many cameras, but I'm just a sucker for buying a new camera. So honestly, one of the biggest things that I regret is how much I love to buy cameras, but it's a very losing battle, because especially if you're like me and you're willing to switch systems, you know, I was in the Canon system and then I switched to the Sony system. So I've got a bunch of Sony lenses. And right now, Sony hasn't released the a7S III yet, which is really making me angry. So I'm considering other systems. But the problem is now I've got Canon lenses, I've got Sony lenses, and if I decide to switch systems, will my lenses be compatible? The whole thing is kind of a mess. So I strongly recommend you guys listen to me carefully. Do not get caught up in buying cameras. Cameras are never a good investment. They just depreciate. They're probably as bad as cars when it comes to the amount that they depreciate. And realistically, nobody cares what camera you shoot on. Like right now, you guys probably would never guess what camera I'm currently shooting this video on. You might think you know, but I promise you, you're probably wrong. So if you think you know what camera this is, leave it down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you guys have to think. But those are the 5 things I personally regret purchasing. Let me know what you guys regret purchasing down below in the comments. Also, if you haven't seen YC's video, definitely go check it out. He has 5 or at least 4 other things that he regrets that I strongly recommend you guys go take a look at, because his has some really good insight as well. But thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Give it a big thumbs up, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.